Hey folks, I am sorry to show you that I'm doing this from my webcam, not my actual camera, because when I know this is going to be a long video and that camera might just be too old or what, but it doesn't like to record for very long. So, well, good news, I got a new kidney, my brother's kidney. Thank you, brother. I love you, brother. He quite actually saved my life. And apparently I got to spend the next 2 months indoors. I got to stay inside for 2 months. So what better to do than go 1 week at a time exploring more of a filmmaker's filmography. So this past week, I spent the last 7 days watching Woody Allen flicks. I had already seen 14 of his films, but there were still a few more that I wanted to check out, so I just made a whole week of it. How'd it go? Well, my feelings for Allen haven't changed. Although I will say I've been able to be a bit more objective when watching his movies before I let his egotism, his narcissism, and his self-absorption get the best of me. I think it affected my ratings of those films, but not completely. This time around, I acknowledge those qualities still. Of course, you can't not. Yet I still try to view them as individual films and not against his filmography as a whole. Without further ado, here's my ranking of the 11 films of his that I saw this week. One day I might do a full video ranking all 25 of his that I've seen, but I think I would like to do that when I had more subscribers. Subscribe, please. At number 11 is Match Point from 2005. I did not let this affect my rating whatsoever, but I was in a play a couple years ago that a fellow cast member revealed to me later once it was over, that the play, called The Devil's Staircase, was a complete ripoff of this movie. Well, years later, I finally watched it, and I gotta say, honestly, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. Not every scene in the movie was in the play, but every scene that was in the play is in the movie, to the most inconsequential, most minute, most trivial detail. I mean, he went to as far as just lightly, barely paraphrasing most of the lines and even stealing verbatim the rest of them. This writer-director added almost nothing. Sure, he renamed it and switched it from tennis to golf and gave characters different names and altered location, but it's exactly the same. If Allen had been in any of those shows, he could file a legit lawsuit and probably win, as he should. Match Point takes place in England somewhere, following a ex-tennis player who is now giving tennis lessons to rich people. He befriends one of these rich people, the guy that played Ozymandias in the Watchmen movie, and starts dating and ends up marrying this guy's sister, Emily Mortimer, but becomes attracted to this guy's girlfriend, Scarlett Johansson, and they take up an adulterous relationship. It's one of Allen's more serious efforts. It's not a comedy at all, and I gotta say, I found the film devoid of any personality, stakes. Well, there's stakes, but you don't feel them. Tension, tone, or voice. It's just a completely flat movie. I mean, the supporting performances are fine, but the lead guy is just awful. And there's typical themes of class, greed, and lust, but it adds a little more flavor in its exploration of how luck does or doesn't play into life. 2 out of 4 stars. At number 10 is The Curse of the Jade Scorpion from 2001. This is one of those I had been longing to see. I just loved the name and the poster. I mean, the premise sounded fun too, but it's not, gotta say. Like with Match Point, except this time a straight-up comedy, it lacks any personality or voice. There's also no flow to the film. Things just kind of happen, and its cinematography just sits there and documents and records. I don't know why you would hire Zhao Fei if you're just going to have him put the camera on a tripod and just pan or tilt along the actors. I mean, this is 1940s New York City. Lots of visual potential there. Unfortunately, this is a typical thing, frequent thing in Allen's mid to late period. So The Curse of the Jade Scorpion is a film we can actually criticize Allen personally on. He was 66 at the time. And puts himself in the lead role where a woman, Helen Hunt, who is 28 years younger than him, is secretly in love with him. And worse, another woman, a 26-year-old Charlize Theron, lusts after him desperately for no reason, despite only have meeting him once, very briefly, as if. In the story, Alan and Hunt are hypnotized by a magician to steal jewelry for him. Great premise that goes nowhere interesting or funny. It's also overlong and has some plot holes. 2 out of 4 stars. Number 9 is Small Time Crooks from 2000. Another one of those films of his I had been longing to see. Love the poster and the premise. A man, Woody Allen, persuades his wife, Tracy Ullman, 24 years younger than him, to open a cookie bakery so he can build a tunnel from the basement to the bank behind it to rob it with his criminal buddies, Tony Darrow, John Lovitz, and Michael Rappaport. Fun, right? And it starts off fun, but after 30 minutes or so, it shifts gears and makes an abrupt narrative left turn into a different movie completely. What began as a silly bank robbing comedy turns into a silly class comedy. As what happens is they inadvertently get super rich from the cookie business and start living the high life. The difference is Tracy Ullman's character, Frenchie, wants to become more cultured and sophisticated, while Alan's character is not interested in doing that whatsoever. This chunk of Small Time Crooks has its moments, certainly, but it's largely insipid and unfunny. But it does thankfully pick back up, maybe the last 30 minutes or so, concluding in a very endearing way. However, despite this and its solid first act and a great performance by director Elaine May as maybe cinema's dumbest character, none of that makes up for that boring middle portion. So I gave it 2 stars, a close 3 though. And it's worth noting, worth addressing, that how are we supposed to believe Woody Allen as a brainy career criminal? That guy? That eccentric, manic, neurotic weasel? Yeah, okay. All right, so number 8 is also a close 3 stars, Deconstructing Harry from 1997. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what Woody Allen says. The character of Harry Block is based on Allen himself, not author Philip Roth, who is a theory because he was an apparent close friend of Allen's ex-partner, Mia Farrow. Why would Allen want to attack him and not her directly or any of her romantic partners? More so, if he didn't want anybody to think Harry Block was him, why would he cast himself and not somebody else? Also, why wouldn't you write the character differently, not the same character he always writes and plays? And if it's meant to be a diss on Roth, why isn't it more critical and damning? Instead, it's like a melancholic tragedy of a man who can't function in life, only in his art of writing. And at the end, it seems like we're supposed to feel sorry for this immoral, miserable guy and not want him to get what he deserves. This was my biggest problem with Deconstructing Harry, and unfortunately, it is a pretty big one. But I really like the all-star cast, the Godardian jump cuts, the story's structure and that involves enactments of Harry Block's short stories, and I'm always fond of surreal elements, which this film starts to include near the end. All right, number 7 is Wonder Wheel from 2017. I'm a bit of a slut for films based on plays or films that are play-like, and it couldn't be more obvious that Wonder Wheel was likely conceived initially as a play that was, for some reason, converted into a movie. It's got all those trademarks, it's all dialogue. There's like 3 locations. One character complains of a headache the entire time. Another character narrates things, and its titular amusement park ride is used as a metaphor. Those are all like play-like things. But it's a bit too stagey and stilted. The worst parts of it, though, for me, is the visuals. The depth of field is really deep, the green screens, and the oversaturation of color. It all makes the film look super artificial, super cheap, and super ugly. The costumes and production design, this takes place during the 1950s, are too clean, too glossy, and too polished. The lighting, on the other hand, I gotta say, is gorgeous. Kate Winslet is excellent. Juno Temple is pretty good. Jim Belushi is even decent, but Justin Timberlake is predictably bad. I don't know what the thinking was for that. I don't know if he thought it would, get bigger box office returns. I don't know if this is his weird way of trying to get hip with younger celebrities or what. Who knows? I don't know. It's weird though. My favorite thing though about Wonder Wheel is the metaphor I mentioned earlier. The characters go through highs and lows. They're always moving, but only in circles, never going forward. I like that. Almost gave this 3 stars, but went with 2. Number 6 is A Rainy Day in New York from 2019. Like with Wonder Wheel, this too was sort of up my alley. It takes place over the course of a single day and is character/dialogue driven. Timothée Chalamet tries to act and sound and talk just like Woody Allen. I don't know if that was Allen's insistence, because he's been known to do that to Diane Keaton, which really annoys me, or if this was, solely Chalamet's decision. Either way, bad idea. But Elle Fanning is good, and the surprising standout is Selena Gomez. It helps that she probably has the funniest lines, but she delivers them perfectly. Cherry Jones and Jude Law are good too. And like Wonder Wheel, the cinematographer is the same. Vittorio Storaro. His lighting is exquisite, even if a bit unrealistic at times here. And as I've said before, I think Allen's films often lack a distinct tone, but this one has one. It's got a very mellow mood, a soft spirit, although I do think the delicate jazz piano does most of the heavy lifting there, but it's appropriate considering its raininess that's alluded to in the title. The script is expectedly witty, and the end's the only way it should, and I appreciate that. Of course, there are cons, aside from Chalamet's performance. The lives of young, rich, spoiled yuppies is a bit out of touch, if you ask me. Chalamet's Gatsby is especially insufferable. I mean, come on, his name is Gatsby. But he's insecure, narcissistic, and selfish. Is he supposed to be? I'm not sure. I'd like to be sure. This is how he's that way. The story is Ashley, Elle Fanning, is given an assignment by their university's paper to go interview a renowned filmmaker all the way out in New York City. And Gatsby tags along because it's his hometown, so he meets up with family and old friends until she's done so they can go out and do stuff, like romantic things. However, the story becomes more complicated. She starts to cancel a plan after plan that Gatsby had made, and instead of being happy for her, instead of being supportive of her, he gets annoyed, jealous, and suspects the worst. And I hope that character in the future grows up to be more secure and more mature, but we'll never know, can we? Almost gave this 3 stars out of 4 too, but gave it 2. Now we're in the top 5. I genuinely like all these. So number 5 is Stardust Memories from 1980. Like with Deconstructing Harry, however, Woody Allen insists that Stardust Memories is in no way at all autobiographical, despite 3 things. Despite the fact that he wrote the character he plays as a comedian who makes comedic films, much like Allen. Think his Bananas and Sleeper period. Despite the fact that he wrote the character, the same character he always plays and writes, who's relatively subdued, I will admit, this time, and despite the fact that he's written the character he plays being criticized for many of the same things Allen is often criticized being. The same things I've been saying all this video, the ego, the narcissism, the self-absorption, that stuff. I didn't count this against my rating, but I was particularly bothered by the character he plays having constantly bombarded by fans asking for autographs, fawning over him, and praising him incessantly. And in typical fashion, of course, he's romantically involved with 3 characters who are at least 10 years younger than him. The character is a little more unbearable than usual because of his attitude and behavior in his relationships. He encourages a woman to leave her husband in order to pursue their relationship and move in together. All the while, presently, throughout the film, he is flirting with and wooing another woman, and on top of that, is still in love with one of his ex-girlfriends. Having said that, the work of Gordon Willis is fantastic, and as I've said before, I'm a sucker for surrealist or surreal-ish imagery and sequences, and I always dig a film that's appropriately ambiguous. How much of Stardust Memories is really happening? Is it the intermingling of fantasy and reality? of a man in a midlife crisis during a psychiatric mental breakdown. Is he dead, or at least at death's door? Don't know. All valid interpretations, and Alan gratefully does not answer. I can see totally why he sees this as one of his best films. It just might be. 3 out of 4 stars. Number 4 is Woody Allen's Russian movie. Before there was date movie, before there was epic movie, before there was disaster movie, before there was the scary movie franchise, there was Woody Allen's Love and Death from 1975. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not Russian. I've never been Russian, and I'll never be Russian. I've only read a couple Russian novels, and I've only seen a handful or 2 or 3 of Russian films, but I still thoroughly enjoyed this. It's a send-up of classic Russian literature, and while I didn't understand or catch every joke and reference, I know enough through my limited experience with Russian's written arts and through cultural osmosis to have a good time watching it. I'm aware enough of common subjects and themes Russia tends to explore that Allen plays around with here. Things, they're often philosophical in their explorations of class struggle, the existence of God, fate, the human condition, morality, political ideologies, and romance, etc. Kindred, stop it! He's looking at his wiener. There's enough bits and quips, though, that don't require any knowledge of Russian culture, history, literature, or philosophy. You don't even have to know the influence that Charlie Chaplin and Harold Lloyd and the Marx Brothers had on Allen that affects this movie. You don't even need to know how he's mocking one of his cinematic idols, Ingmar Bergman, to get a good laugh. The average Joe can enjoy this movie thoroughly and find it pretty funny without knowing any of that stuff. The smartest thing Allen does, though, is drop his usual maladjusted self into early 1800s Russia. He doesn't act, look, sound, or talk Russian, and that's where most of the comedy comes from. The anachronism of his presence and the proleptic jokes throughout are the highlights of the film. I can also appreciate the dedication to the costumes and sets. Usually, spoofs overlook that. 3 stars. Oh, gross. Let me get water. We're in the top 3 now, folks. Starting with Hannah and Her Sisters from 1986. I actually have a huge gripe with this one, but nearly everything else about it make up for it. That gripe is Woody Allen writing and casting himself into the lead role in one of his films that's not even about his character. This film is called Hannah and Her Sisters. It's not called Hannah and Her Ex-Husband. It's not even called Hannah and Her Sisters plus her ex-husband. If it were, that would be fine. I wouldn't be saying anything about it, but it's not. So him forcing himself in this one feels exactly like that. He's forcing himself in. It's like he can't stand not being the center of attention, that he can't take not being in one of his own films, that he's incapable of giving somebody else a go at it. Leading up to this film from 1986, he had made 14 films, and only 2 of them he did not star in. Interiors and Purple Rose of Cairo. Hannah and Her Sisters is barely even about Hannah. She probably gets the least amount of screen time. Most of that screen time goes to Allen. The other sisters are Lee, Barbara Hershey, and Holly Diane Wiest. Again, he gets more screen time than them, and they're in the title. I get having him in the 2 flashbacks, but the rest of his screen time should have been dedicated to Holly specifically. I don't want to spoil why, but she has the most important arc in the whole film. But aside from that, this is great. It just needs a different title. That would solve a lot of problems. The structure of it's great. It's sandwiched between 2 Thanksgiving dinners. It's divided into chapters and bounces back between all the characters in a way that's never for too long or never for too short, while incorporating realistic narration of their thoughts in real time. It's acted well, paced well, and has a solid script that doesn't glorify or make light of or romanticize infidelity. I always appreciate that. 3 stars, almost 4. Okay, number 2 is Bullets Over Broadway from 1994. Not starring Allen this time, but John Cusack as a young playwright making his Broadway debut with his new play. The thing is, in order to get financing, he has to cast the untalented girlfriend of the gangster funding the production. The cast is great. The 3 Oscar nominees are earned, and Alan's writing is sharp. His writing Oscar is earned as well. This time, like with Hannah and Her Sisters and Love and Death, there's an actual visual language. The period costumes and sets are top notch. It's funny despite dabbling in darkness, but it balances both properly. It builds to a moving, romantic, and uncynical climax. The overarching theme of Bullets Over Broadway seems to be that of the artistic process, how compromises are not only expected, but demanded and required, and what the cost of that should be. Is it worth sacrificing your dignity and integrity? Is it worth dying over? Is it worth killing over? Yeah. 3, almost 4 stars. At last, the only 4-star flick of the bunch. Shadows and Fog. This was the last one that I had been longing to see. This time not for the name or the poster, but the premise alone. The typical Alan person, is a bookkeeper, is tasked by a group of vigilantes to help track down a strangling serial killer in an unnamed city during the early 20th century. It's said to be an ode to German expressionism, but I found it more of a tribute to film noir, even if the story takes a sillier approach to its dark material. Shadows and Fog may have his largest recognizable cast. I'm going to look at my notes here because it is pretty long. So you got Alan himself, Kathy Bates, John Cusack, Mia Farrow, Jodie Foster, Julie Kavner, William H. Macy, Madonna, John Malkovich, Fred Malamed, Donald Pleasance, John C. Reilly, Wallace Shawn, Lily Tomlin, Tom from Office Space, Mr. Krueger from Seinfeld, and Red Foreman from That 70s Show. I don't know their names. The name of the film, speaking of names, isn't just to describe the visual aesthetic, and this may be Alan's best-looking film, to be honest. It carries significant thematic weight as well. Alan's character is asked 3 times throughout if he believes in God, implying there's existential uncertainty among the characters. They wander a literal and metaphorical fog, unsure what their direction or their purpose is. The shadows indicate the duality of man, I think. Yes, obviously the serial killer is an immoral person, but so do the vigilante groups become immoral because they fraction off into groups, taking their disagreements to the extent that one group has another one's leader killed. So yeah, this fear and paranoia causes the characters to lose sight of logic and morality and reason amidst the figurative and literal fog and shadows. 4 out of 4 stars, like I said. Well, that's it. That was my week of Woody Allen ranked. I would like to know what your favorite Woody Allen flicks are. I wonder if I've even seen them because he's got a long list of movies he's made. He's very prolific. And stay tuned next Monday because this week I'm going through Takashi Miike's films. I've already seen 12 or 13, 14 of his films too, but there's still more that I wanted to check out, so I'm using this time to do that. So, bye! Like and subscribe!
Why are there so many movies?